What's up everyone, and welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and all that kind of stuff. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet for more Reddit content, and as usual, we're getting right into today's stories. My friend suddenly thinks he's a genius after taking an online IQ test. So I have a friend, let's call him Brian, who won't shut up about his IQ. Ever since he took some online tests that said he got a 131, he's been acting like he's the second coming of Einstein. At first, it was just kind of annoying. He'd drop random fun facts about how high IQ people process information differently. He started using words like erudite and obfuscate in normal conversations. But then it got worse. He started low-key insulting us. He told our friend Emily, who's in med school, that doctors are just good at memorization, not real intelligence. He told me I was wasting potential because I work in marketing, instead of something more intellectually rigorous. Dude works in IT, at a help desk. Anyway, last week we were at a party and he started talking about IQ again. Someone jokingly said, "If you're so smart, why aren't you rich?" And Brian, completely serious, goes, "Well, intelligence isn't always about wealth, it's about how you process the world. Low IQ people can never truly grasp how limiting their perception is." So I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Damn bro, that's crazy. What's it like having a high IQ and still losing at fantasy football every year?" The room exploded. Brian turned red, mumbled something about variance and sample sizes, and left the party early. Now he's barely texting in the group chat, and a mutual friend told me I embarrassed him too much. And now, naturally, half the group has been testing their IQs just to mess with him. Someone dropped this 10-minute Cerebrum IQ test in the chat, and it's become a full-blown competition. If Brian was really a genius, you'd think he'd take it again and prove us all wrong. But nah, suddenly he's not a fan of online tests anymore. I was forced to eat at fancy restaurants for a month. Many years ago, I got put on a work assignment for months that required me to travel to New York City and stay every Monday to Friday. I was assisting a company manager with a project, and my hotel was near his regular office in the theater district. If you are not familiar, the theater district is heavily built for tourists. Restaurants are generally kind of fancy and expensive. There were really not any quick and cheap options for dining in that area. The company had a generous meal policy of up to $30 to $40 per meal for travel expenses. I did use that for a bit, but the food got to feeling too indulgent and kind of ridiculous given it was an extended assignment. Also, I was working really long hours and did not want to go sit in restaurants. I just wanted to go watch TV and sleep in my room. So after the first week or so, I instead went to a grocery store on Monday night. I bought some basics for cereal, sandwiches and snacks, and some frozen meals I could microwave for lunch in the office. It cost about $60. I then took a few cans of soda from my hotel fridge to make room for my weekly food purchase, and returned them before checking out at the end of the week. And that was it for food costs, with an occasional meal out here or there. I did the same the next 4 weeks, submitted my expense report at the end of the month. You know where this is going. A lady from accounting called and refused to reimburse my expenses because $60 is more than $40, the max allowance for a meal purchase. I explained that had covered 5 days of food but was told it didn't matter. I then spent the next month trying all the food in the neighborhood. There really were not any cheap options. I went out to eat a few mornings, lunch whenever I found time, and dinner absolutely every day. I could have bought a few installments of groceries, but the once-a-week shopping convenience was part of why I'd wanted them. It had also seemed wasteful for me to go out for an expensive meal every night for long-term travel, but now I'd been told that was preferred by accounting to my grocery bills. The next month I got a call from my NYC manager, asking how I'd run through more budget every week of the month than the entire month before combined. I explained the grocery situation and he thanked me and hung up. About 10 minutes later, that same lady from accounting called me to tell me they'd pay my still not reimbursed grocery bill and any going forward, as long as the daily amount averaged for the week was under the aggregate meal allowance. I happily returned to a more reasonable diet. My teacher thought they knew my name better than me. This was years ago now when I was in secondary school, around 15 years old. We used to have form in the morning where the teacher would take the register and let you know about anything going on in the school before you went to your other classes. My form tutor was a miserable old woman who was a renowned arsehole. There were several stories I could tell about her, but this one is the only time I got the better of her. My parents named me a shortened version of a posh-sounding name. For the sake of the story, let's say they called me Alex, which is short for Alexander. Whenever this woman would call my name, she would always use Alexander. I brought up to her that is not my name multiple times and asked her to please call me Alex, as that's what my parents called me. She would always get angry and tell me, "Don't be stupid, no one is named Alex. Your name is Alexander. Alex is just what you want to be called." No matter how much I insisted, she refused. At one point, she gave me detention for asking her to call me my correct name. The school called to let my parents know I had been given detention for arguing with my teacher. When I told my parents I was supposed to have detention for asking my teacher to call me the right name, they were not happy. So they gave me a trump card to use against her, my birth certificate. The next day when she called my name, I once again told her that wasn't my name. She threatened me with another detention, so I pulled out the birth certificate, put it down on her desk, and said, "My birth certificate says my name is Alex, so that's what you will call me. Thanks." The look on her face was priceless, and she started calling me my actual name for the rest of the time I was in her class. My neighbors almost killed me. My apartment complex is by far the worst I've ever lived in, despite paying a lot of money and being in a good part of town. I could go on and on about all the problems I've had. My car was stolen out of the parking lot. Bats have lived and died on my balcony for 2 years, and the leasing office has refused to do anything about it. There is constantly mold and roaches. You get the picture. But boy oh boy, you would not believe the trauma I've had to endure from my neighbors. One was a 27-year-old drug addict/dealer who moved in next to me and immediately started causing problems. He would blast music that would shake my walls all night, shout and scream, and be tweaking out on his balcony constantly. Throw full pieces of furniture like tables over his balcony and have them explode on the ground below, and generally be a lunatic. All of which I reported to the office with video evidence and was subsequently ignored. Then one night I heard what sounded like a freight train hitting our shared walls at 4 a.m. I went to knock on his door, and before I even could, it flung open and he and another guy, who it turned out was squatting in his apartment, were bloodied and had each other pinned to the ground in chokeholds and had completely demolished their apartment. I called 911, who took over an hour to get there. In the meantime, the squatter ended up outside with the fire extinguisher, which he used as a battering ram to try to break the neighbor's door down. When the neighbor stepped out, he swung at him, then at me, and then the neighbor grabbed a vodka bottle and smashed it over his head. He ended up bleeding out all over my porch, so I was compressing his open head wound when the cops finally showed up, and the other guy made a run for it. After this, despite 5 more calls to the cops due to repeated crazed threats from the neighbor that he would kill me and similar psychotic behavior, it took the complex 7 effing months to evict him. I've obviously been wanting to get the hell out for a while and was waiting until my lease expired. I already got a new apartment and was living there, and went back to do the last bit of cleaning and to turn in my keys on Saturday. I was mopping my bedroom floor, walked out to get something from the kitchen, and not even 15 seconds later heard what sounded like an explosion behind me. I had no idea what happened, so I went back to the bedroom to see a hole had been blasted through the floor, and a 9mm bullet was laying right where my bed used to be, and right where I had just been cleaning. The cops came out and determined that my downstairs neighbor must have accidentally discharged one of his many guns and almost killed my ass the very day I was trying to escape that hellhole for good. They found at least 6 firearms in his apartment, including a sniper rifle. The complex manager was laughing about the whole ordeal, had a nasty attitude with me, and fought with me over giving me my security deposit back because of the bullet hole in the floor. And then the day after, there was almost a $600 charge for damages in my resident portal and prorated rent, despite having turned my keys in on the 1st of the month. Let's just say my subsequent crash out was warranted, and they are removing the charges and mailing me my security deposit back. Enjoy the pictures to corroborate this insanity. A lady called to warn us about her husband. Officially had one of the wildest experiences in my 4 years of serving last night. Got sat with a 2.5 top, a husband, wife, and their new baby in a stroller. When the hostess came to let me know I got sat, she informed me that the wife at the table had called ahead of time to let us know her husband was going to be very picky and difficult. Before I even got to greet them, they asked to switch tables 2 times for whatever reason. Once they were finally situated, I go to greet them, and the husband let me know immediately that they were ready to order. He proceeds to order around $130 worth of appetizers, entrees, dessert, and gets 3 different drinks for himself all in one go. His wife, quiet as a mouse, just orders a drink. During his order, he was so aggressive, making demands, and asking in-depth questions about every single food item he was ordering and modifying it in some way. And every few seconds while he was ordering, he'd bark and remind me, I want it hot, fresh, delicious. I filled a notebook page with this guy's order. He also asked his wife if she wanted a tequila shot, and she shook her head no. He turned to me and said, "Gotta set the mood right, you know, we just had a baby," and smirked and chuckled at me, which I did not acknowledge in any way. They got their drinks, and I was told by my coworker that the wife said she didn't like her drink and wanted to replace it. Their food started coming out while the replacement was being made, and as I was dropping the new drink off, the husband looks at me and says, "Yeah, we got a big problem. I didn't like any of it." And I apologized and said I would be right back with my manager. I immediately went to go grab my manager and tell him what happened, and as we are walking back to the table, they are gone. They left without paying their bill. We had to just comp the whole thing, but it was absolutely bananas. I've had tables leave without paying their tab, but it's never been intentional. Absolutely wild, man. The story of the apartment building Karen. A few years ago, I was helping my mother-in-law move into an apartment building for people 50 plus. The doors have a lock that is opened with a key card. As I'm unloading the U-Haul and opening the door, an old lady approaches my wife and I. She comes up pretty close, way in my bubble, my personal zone, and asks if we live here. Not wanting to be rude, I tell her that we are helping my mother-in-law move in. She saw me using the key card and tells me that I'm not allowed to have one according to the rules of the apartment, and that she is going to get my mother-in-law evicted. She then asks what apartment she lives in. I tell her it's none of her business and to please leave us alone to do our work. When we get to the apartment, we tell mother-in-law what happened so she's prepared for a response. She tells us that the rules actually say that people helping with moving and family are allowed to use the key card, and since we are both, we're fine. On the way back down to the U-Haul, I got an idea. Of course, the Karen was still standing out by our U-Haul, just waiting to say something stupid again. We start getting more furniture and head to the door. She can't contain or control herself, so obviously she starts in on us with, "What are your names? You could be criminals. What is the apartment number? You shouldn't have a key card." That's where I put my plan in action. I tell her I don't have a key card anymore. I don't need it. I hacked into the building's security with my smartphone. I go up to the door, hold my phone up to the lock, and it turns green and opens. I hid the key card in my phone case so she couldn't see it. She stomped off, mumbling to herself about reporting us to the main office. Little did she know that I already talked to them. They are sick of her harassing people, and she has a long history of doing just that. I told them my plan, and they laughed about it. Treat me like a criminal, and now you get to worry that I hacked your building's security. Anyway guys, that's going to be all for today. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. And as always, if you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you can be notified whenever we upload. And with that, I'm out of here, so take care everyone, and I'll see you next time.